the city of good old Watts. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the SWOT analysis of the Single Arm Snatch. We are going to dive in here and talk about one of my favorite lifts, the dumbbell, fat bell, or kettlebell single arm snatch. Now, I'm not anti-barbell. I just feel like, especially for the older adult, that the unilateral approach to snatching an implement is so much more valuable when we look at 2 or maybe 3 workouts a week, and you really got to maximize your time and your effort, be able to get both arms overhead to manipulate one implement. Like the bilateral lift is such a challenging lift, in my opinion, especially with the aging body. 2 shoulders that probably aren't going to match up very well. I think you get greater value out of the single, so that's why we're going to specifically focus a little bit more on that as we go. Now, let's dive into a little bit of the instruction here of what the single arm snatch looks like. Basically, you're going to properly pick up your implement, again, dumbbell, kettlebell, and or fat bell, and we're going to use something called a short hinge, which means a power hang or a power position from the hang, meaning the top of the knee and then you go. So it's a short little hinge action. This is not a yank with the arm. It is a posterior chain pull. So I'm going to initiate this from my gastroc, my hamstring, my glute, my erectors, my rhomboid. The whole back side of the body is basically going to whip this implement overhead. My biggest cue is going to be the elbow up to the ear. I'm going to carry that momentum all the way to the overhead position and basically just lock out my arm at the top and then return in what we call a negative fashion, which means I'm bringing the implement back down under control and back to the hip to start, okay? Now, we'll show you a video of this in just a moment, but basically speaking, we're going top of the knee, hinge, high pull, reach, negative, negative, with as dynamic and fast action as you can possibly produce with your client. Now, we will teach this in the beginning, to use a fairly light weight and really master the mechanics of this. This is for clients that are capable and able of getting both arms over their head, and they can do so with load. There's no impingements, no limitations, nothing that's going to hurt them, okay? All right, so let's look at our strengths when developing the ability to single arm snatch. There very, very much so is a real life application to this. And what we mean is that you're going to grab something with one hand or with both hands and either high pull it to the chin. Picking up grandchildren is a great example of this, a bag of dog food, something where you're in a short hinge, the kid or the bag or whatever it is you're getting, you're going to bring up and kind of create that momentum, that up and under component that can be seen with the clean, but can also be seen with the snatch of taking all that momentum all the way overhead, okay? Now, is there a life-specific movement, like I'm gonna grab my suitcase and snatch it over my head? Not really, but the movement mechanics and the value to this really does carry over, and it kind of addresses everything. There's power component to this. There's a full range of motion that's gonna go from the broken hip hinge position to all the way overhead. You get some contralateral work as you're working one arm. The opposite side angle, the crisscross action, as we talked about in the past a little bit, is going to be very prevalent and developed. So we get a lot of really good values there, okay? And that kind of takes us into the opposite side cross section. When we talk about the contralateral action, when we walk, left foot forward, right hand goes forward. And then as we're walking, we're kind of doing that alternating, contralateral action. There is a cross section across the spine from left lower glute up through the right upper shoulder, wrapping over to your pec. That whole muscular X, if you will, or the one side of that X, is engaged to assist you in the swing follow through of one step. And then the exact opposite of the other side is the other side. So you're always working this little X pattern, this cross-sectional pattern with stepping, your regular walking gaits, and or these alternative lifts that we do, specifically with the single arm action. So if I'm doing a single arm snatch with my right hand, my left lower back glute hip area is going to be kind of the primary counter and is going to get the majority of the work to not allow me to rotate, to keep me in a good line and to give me a really good pull going up and overhead. That will work all the way up to the posterior chain, the right basically girdle of my shoulder, and then the security of that arm in the overhead position. Now, because we're going to develop that strength and that cross-sectional pattern while we're doing this lift, it will have a very positive effect on our gait. As people get stronger in that cross-sectional muscular development, you'll see it transition from more dynamic lifts like the snatch to more simple or simplistic movements like a walking gait, like a lunge, like a step up. A lot of this will carry over, and as we talked about, it has some practical life experience to it, not necessarily in the one arm throwing action overhead, but in this cross-sectional development, okay? So we've got some pretty good strengths to gain from this. We will get into a little bit more on the opportunities, but just to kind of give you an idea from that one, okay? All right, looking at our next, this is going to be our weaknesses. So where are we concerned here with our weaknesses? Our weaknesses are going to focus a bit more on the shoulder girdle itself. Now, as I said in the beginning, if you're not capable of getting your arm all the way over your head, just with your body weight alone, we should not be loading this and then hoping that throwing that weight over our head will get it there. So structurally, we need to make sure nothing's wrong with the shoulder. If there's any kind of shoulder girdle issue, an impingement, an overdevelopment, any of this, the snatch will probably not benefit the lifter. Got to make sure that the mechanics inside that joint are going to work first, and that you've got some good stability in that joint before we start to whip overhead. So shoulder girdle weakness, any of the musculatures around that, this is all four rotator cuffs, infraspinatus, supraspinatus, teres minor, and your subscapularis, along with teres major, posterior delt, lateral delt, anterior delt, pec, subscapularis, serratus, your lat, like all of these stabilizers around the joint. If we're having any weakness there, that girdle, that strength of this joint will be compromised. So we got to be aware there. The cross-sectional strength is big here too, because we're talking about that opposite side. So if I have a right-handed weight snatch that I'm doing, if my left lower back has any weaknesses, any imbalances, more than likely I'm going to start to compensate, and I'm going to try to manipulate this lift to work in my benefit, but at what cost? Now I'm going to start recruiting more from my back or from my neck, or using more of my arm because my lower left back, my erectors, my cross section is not as strong as it should be. So we got to make sure we have some pretty good strength, some good coordination, and the ability to kind of counterweight and work a weighted ability, meaning that if I'm going to hold a weight in my right hand, that right-handed weight, that load is not going to manipulate everything else, meaning I can anti-rotate, I can anti-flex, I can anti-extend, that the weight is not going to dominate me and pull me into bad positions. It's either just a little bit too heavy or I'm just not capable of doing this lift. So regressions from this until the strength development gets there. Any kind of shoulder raise, front, lateral, posterior raise, bent over fly, I's, Y's, T's, W's, Z's, V's, all of those are great for developing that shoulder girdle strength. Any kind of leverage overhead press like a landmine or a pivot point is going to help you develop that overhead strength and stability. And then working proper hinging mechanics with a bilateral implement like a kettlebell or a barbell, and then eventually loading one side and the other, and now in like developing strength that'll allow you not to rotate or pivot or cave in. If you work each of those independently and then start to implement some hinge high pulls with the single arm, eventually we can start to transition to that overhead position, okay? So we got to make sure that any general weaknesses in the body or the mechanics, we're not going to force this lift because it's probably going to do more damage than good. We won't have great opportunities to seek an opportunity to seek muscular imbalances. We're already going to have them and just make them worse if we don't address those issues first. So you don't load asymmetries is basically what I'm getting at. Okay, opportunities here. Great opportunity to develop grip strength and shoulder girdle strength. Now, we talked about kind of breaking down these pieces. In doing so, when you have one hand trusting to one implement, that grip strength does get taxed quite a bit more, and you're moving it rather quickly. So moving through your three phases of movement, you have a preparation phase. In this case, it's the hinge on the way down. We're in the preparation. We have the acceleration phase where I am pulling with my glutes, hamstrings, erectors, and attempting to high pull and whip this weight overhead. That's the acceleration phase. And then the follow-through phase is the turnover reach and securing the weight overhead. Now, as I prepare that eccentric stretch on the down, I'm going to get a change in direction where I'm lowering, switching, changing direction, pulling up. My grip is going to get taxed. My shoulder girdle is going to get taxed. If I am not pulling back, engaged, holding tight, I'm going to lose that battle. The weight will tear out of my hand, or my shoulder will give, or my back will rotate. something will lose. So I've got to make sure I'm locked in there tight and then working almost like an isometric contraction with my grip, with my shoulder, basically just locking in and then allowing the hip to do the mechanical work and create the canopole, okay? As I accelerate, I'm going to tax that grip as well, because 10 pounds is now going to feel like a lot more in my hand as I start to accelerate it into the up position. As you accelerate to the high pull, that elbow goes past the ear, you transition to the follow through. There's not a lot of loaded rotation. There really shouldn't be. It should basically be the highest pull and then a punch reach at the top to secure the weight into the follow through phase. And now I just simply get to secure load and hold it overhead, building more shoulder stability and strength and securing the weight there. So it very much so is a whip to the overhead catch, whip to the overhead catch. So that's going to help me a lot with my grip strength, my shoulder girdle strength, my overhead range of motion, mobility, stability. All of this is going to get improved as I kind of work opposite side corner, reaching high, set of 8, and then I switch to the other side and develop the same on that side. We talked about the coordination. Okay, this is a single arm unilateral attempt, but I can work with different staggers. So I could drop step with my right foot and hold the weight with my right hand. So I've got a little kickstand action. That's going to be a little bit different than standing with our even bilateral feet. You could do a single leg snatch where you're standing on one foot and pulling, very much so more technical. There are variables here where you can work on different coordinations and different angles of attack. Instead of just going heavier, making the lift a little bit more technical with the same load, but putting the body into some different positions to challenge it, okay? Power improvement, anytime you are moving load quick or quicker than you normally do, we're gonna work on power development. So I love this in terms of getting our client to move a pretty light to moderate load really fast over and over again, transitioning through this whole posterior chain connection and working this great range of motion. You're gonna see really good value here for your clients. Okay, and then our threat of injury, threat of anything that's gonna come about is probably gonna be lower back exposure in the hinge mechanic. If the client's not holding tight, if they're rounding their back, more than likely they're gonna start ripping and pulling with the erectors. That's definitely going to hurt you over time. Remember, your lower back is a copper wire. If you keep bending it and straightening it, bending it and straightening, eventually it's gonna give out. If you just lock it in, hold it tight, and let the hamstrings do the work under the hip, you're gonna be in great shape. So the back is our number one threat. The overhead position, if the shoulder cannot secure to 180, again, we should not be loading this, but if you can't pull the weight quick enough, okay, and get the weight catapulted all the way overhead, then you're gonna end up doing a loaded rotation we call a grind, which means I pull the weight elbow to ear, but I don't have enough momentum to carry, so I have to rotate, grind into my shoulder and try to press to lock out. That means the weight is too heavy. You are not capable of securing it in the catch position all the way overhead, that you're basically doing an ugly clean and press or a clean and jerk, and it's too much for you to handle. So if you're seeing that elbow turn and you're having to push to lock the arm out, you got to go lighter and work on this high elbow catch turn transition where the elbow goes as high as possible, ear height if not higher. The weight will turn over because of the catapulting action of the pull, and you literally just turn your arm unloaded, press and reach up and secure that load overhead. A great way of thinking about this is that you're going to throw it over your head and then your hand will have to stop the weight from leaving. So I'm going to hinge and whip it over my head like I'm going to throw it through the ceiling, and then I just cut my hand at the top and not allow it to leave my hand, okay? You've seen the strongmen throw kegs up and over like high jump bars, that kind of pole vault bars. That's the same idea. I want to create that much dynamic pull, but obviously will not let go at the end. That brings us to our last little component to this, where there is a threat that I am producing power, but am I producing as much power as I possibly could? No. If I actually got to let go of the implement, then I would be. So this is one of the more powerful movements that we can do, but the most powerful movement that we could do in this fashion would be to literally let it go. And you could do that with two hands with a sand bell or a sandball or a medicine ball, throwing overhead, and then you could transition and learn to hold with one hand and throw that implement as well. There are facilities, ourselves included, where we have an area on our property where we have kettlebells that are banged up and they're still working components, but they're designed to land in sand or in soft dirt where you can literally throw it and let it hit the ground again. That way you don't have a follow through catch transition of load. You literally get to prepare, accelerate, release. The follow through is now unloaded rather than with load. So if I can pull that weight over my head as fast and as hard as I can, at the top of that lift, at some point, I have to slow it down and stop it, which means I'm not doing 100% of my effort to try to propel this thing over my head because I know I have to secure it and not let it go out of my hand. So maybe I'm working at 95% maximal effort and the other 5% is stopping the implement, where if I got to just let go of it, it would be 100%, okay? So this is great value. I'm not saying this isn't a knock. This is a great value for, say, hey, I want to do power. I want to train indoors. I want to maximize what I can in here. Go for it. That is the correct answer. Snatch inside, do it. But if you truly want to maximize this, go to an environment or an area or with an implement where you can let go of it. There are sandbells that are 5, 10, 15 pounds with handles that you can swing and do the exact same action and literally let it go and let it hit the ground. The hyperwear sandbells you can grip. They're just big sandbags. Grip onto that and throw it. Like, they're great opportunities for you to work this dynamic single arm, cross-sectional, contralateral, dynamic posterior chain pulling action that's just explosive and fun, and people love to throw things. So this is a great chance for you to do that, okay? All right, I'm gonna hop over here and share one of my videos here with you. We're gonna jump into this one just to give you a little example of exactly how this is done. Okay, you guys should be seeing this, I believe. I think we have it. And so I'm doing this in a little slow motion for you. Here's the hinge just at the top of the knee. You see that elbow all the way up over the ear, and then I return with good control. Hinge, break at the hip, break at the elbow, whip it all the way overhead. Notice my wrist does not kink. Okay, my wrist is nice and straight. I'm pulling that elbow all the way to the ceiling. The momentum turns the implement for me, and I'm literally just catching it in the overhead position. Okay, the higher the pull, the better. The more posterior chain pull, the better. Watch my counter arm. My left arm goes back behind me at the bottom, and then I throw it up in front of me at the top. That helps me secure. It's my barometer for my overhead position. If the left arm is straight, my chest more than likely is going to be straight. My chin stays with my chest. That hinging action all works really well together in one moving piece, meaning that my torso stays locked in, my shoulder and shoulder girdle are locked in. This is a broken hip and below, hamstrings doing all the pull, the erectors are stabilizing and assisting with the shoulder girdle on the back side of my right shoulder all the way down to my left hip, working as that cross-sectional muscle pull to whip this weight all the way overhead and secure it there. All right, gang, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you had fun. And I'll tell you what, I love doing these analysis. I hope you like them too, and you're getting some good value out of them. As always, if you guys have any needs for any of the products, mind you, I do not make any financial return from any of these. These are just affiliates and ambassadors of ours, friends of our program, if you will, and because they're friends of ours, we want to share some discounts with you. So if you need anything from Hyperwear, head over to their website, hyperwear.com, and check out any of their products, from their vests and their sandbells, their sandbags, dumbbells. They've got great stuff. Cannot speak highly enough about their vests. I love all three of them, but if I had to pick one to wear, I would probably pick the Elite. I think it's a dynamic vest, but again, all three of them are great. TOA 15 will get you 15% off there. Muscle Butter USA, musclebutterusa.com. Head over there. That is a 60% arnica anti-inflammatory ointment that you can rub onto any injuries. Fantastic product. This is, again, one that I've been using for a long time. I'm a big believer. It smells great. Linkul 20, put that in for 20% off. Angles90.com, if you need handles, grips, pulley systems, suspension straps. Their angle grips and their handles are the best on the market. Use Linkul 10 to get 10% off. And then, of course, for the beautifully bearded individuals out there, if you need soap, if you need deodorant, shampoos, beard washes, beard butters, any of that, head over to livebearded.com. Check out all their great products and fragrances. Bulky Beard will get you 10% off over there as well. All right, gang, any other questions? You guys need anything from me, you know how to get a hold of me. Email address, robertlinkul@gmail. Head over to YouTube, head over to Instagram, head over to Facebook, and ultimately head over to trainingtheolderadult.com and check us out there. We would love for you to become members of TOA Select, where you get pretty consistent information like I just did today, but a ton of it. I mean, I'm talking hundreds of hours of content that you get to see in all of our exercise libraries, all of our archived presentations and content, our certification, our certificate programs. All of it is included for $79 a month or $99 a month, a 1-year commitment, because you are definitely going to need that whole year to get through at least half of this content, if not more. $79 if you don't need CEUs, $99 a month if you do need CEUs. We would love to have you. The first month is $25 only. Hop in there, try us, check us out. We'd love to have you join us. All right, gang, that's enough from me. Love you guys. I appreciate you, and we will see you next time. Take care.